Right, well this is just a bit of an early look at Assault Squad 2 because the beta is now available if you've pre-ordered the game, which I have done. So I've dived straight into the editor. This is my first time looking at the editor, so I just want to get a feel for it and to make sure it hasn't really changed a great deal. So from the outset, I guess it doesn't look like it's changed much. I'm just having a look at the maps here. So there aren't many maps. I'm guessing more will come out when the full game is released, but there's a few multiplayer maps there, some 8 vs 8, they're obviously really big ones, so I'll load up one of these 3 vs 3 ones. It also looked like we have some single player maps available, USA and German campaigns, but not many maps though, so I'm guessing they're going to expand. I noticed Silo Heights was one of the maps, so that may be an interesting map to play around in the editor. So graphically, I'm just going to fire it up. It's just loading in still. I've got the graphics set for maximum, so it takes a while sometimes to fire up the big maps. I'm just going to set a sky backdrop. Let's go for something nice and bright. So this just feels like Assault Squad's editor at the moment. There doesn't seem to be any real change from what I can tell. Perhaps behind the scenes they've done a bit of tinkering, but it just looks like the same old 2007 gem editor, which isn't a bad thing, but I think it's just worth knowing that Assault Squad 2, in terms of using the editor, it just looks really like it's exactly the same. So I'm guessing that the enhancements really come in the form of the graphics and perhaps the animations and sound effects in the game. So let's just load in some units. So the tanks, heavy tanks, it looks like we've got the same old list really of a sort of tank, heavy tanks. So we've got the same old list as I think is stock in Assault Squad 1. I tend to forget because I use the mods that give me more units, such as the realism mod and all that stuff. I kind of forget what the base stock list of tanks is in Assault Squad now, but I think that pretty much looks like the same list as in previous Men of War games. You've got the Black Prince as one of the British tanks, which I think came with Assault Squad, and you've got the usual bunch of German heavy tanks. So the medium tanks, yeah, pretty standard list. I think there may be a few additions there. One of the couple of Sherman variants. Just taking a look there at some of these lighter tanks. There's a Marder. So yeah, no surprises really. They're all, what's this? A super M26 Pershing. It's good to see that in the game. But we don't have the T29. So there's quite a few tanks that I'm used to seeing that aren't here, and I'm guessing it's because they're tanks from the mods as opposed to the actual game itself. So no doubt when Assault Squad 2's been out for a few weeks, those very same mods will be available for Assault Squad 2. So no big issue really there. So I'm just going to spawn in some units. Graphically, these units look like they're slightly enhanced. I think there's a bit more detail there on the Jag, or the Jag Tiger. I always call it Jag, I know. It's an annoying habit I've got. And that Panzer II there. Tiger II even. So there's an interesting blue overlay you get now for your units, which I think is designed to make it clearer who you're selecting when you're looking at them from behind some sort of foliage or building. I like it, but at the same time I don't like it, if that makes sense. I think it kind of makes sense if you're into this game as a serious RTS player, but I make no secret of the fact that I really only play Men of War to create videos. That's really what I enjoy. It's creating epic battles and filming them. So with features like that, it's great, but for me it just means that I lose a bit of that cinematic edge. But there's ways around it. I think if you select the army that you're playing as, you get that, but if you then press a different keypad button, you won't have them highlighted. So you get, I've just noticed there, you get sort of Pathfinder details now when you select a waypoint for your units. You get an interesting detailed series of arrows that signify where you're heading, which is a nice touch. I'm just getting a feel for the sound effects now, just firing off some shots. So I may be imagining it, but I think the sound effects are slightly different to what's stock in Assault Squad. I think they may have changed the MG sound there for that. I think it's the MG34 in the tank. But essentially, it seems like it kind of seems the same, really. So we've got, yeah, perhaps, I think, no doubt there's some enhancements to the sound effects here, and I'm guessing that I won't really be able to know for sure until I'm playing this, doing big battles, because that's when you start to really get a feel for the different sounds you're hearing. I remember reading one of the big changes they've made with Assault Squad 2 is they've added lots more voice commands, and I think they've just generally improved the level of the dialogue that the various armies say. Some of the sort of grunts, standard stock generic comments have been improved a bit, and the voice acting is better. So I just wanted to press escape here to get an idea of whether or not they've allowed us to save our progress in the editor when we're playing missions within the actual editor. It doesn't look like you can, which is a shame, because that's one feature of Condemned Heroes I actually think is very good, is that when you're playing games in the editor, you can actually save them and then resume them without having to render them as single player missions, which is a nice touch. But unfortunately it doesn't look like it's in Assault Squad 2 so far. So there we go, just a very quick preview of the editor. I just wanted to get a feel for it and to make sure it hadn't changed much. It doesn't look like it has, so it will be a while until I actually do an Assault Squad 2 video. Obviously the game's not even out yet, but stay tuned, and it looks like I'll be able to resume my work once the game hits.